what's up? My name's Kevin. This is episode number 8, and if you like the things that I do, please consider going to teespring.com/crablore to buy the special edition Crablore and Monkey Mod t-shirt to commemorate the comic I'm doing with my friend Mark Rudolph, where it's his character Crablore and my character Monkey Mod teaming up for rock and roll adventures in outer space. All proceeds from the sale of this t-shirt will go to help us afford more time for making comics. So again, that's teespring.com/crablore. There's about 8 days left to fund the thing. I think we need about 45 more people. It's a silkscreen shirt. It's pretty rad. You're going to look super cool, I promise. Okay, enough about that. Let's get on to talking about some inking. Alright, let's start off talking about tools. So I'm primarily a brush inker, so these are very important to me. These are Winsor Newton Series 7 brushes. They're a little gunked up, kind of on their last legs. But I use size 000 to the 000 size. They're on the smaller end of what Winsor Newton offers. However, right now in the US, hopefully this will get cleared up soon, if not already. But these are quote-unquote banned in the US right now. And that's not really necessarily true. Essentially what happened was there was a problem with some paperwork or something with importing these into the US. The bristles here is Kolinsky sable, which is this weasel that's from Italy, and then these are put together in China. So somewhere between Italy and China and coming over to the US, there was some paperwork that was wrong. So right now, you can't get these. So I'm a little worried because, like I said, these are on the last legs. But there's a way to revive them, and I'll probably do a demonstration of how to do that soon. The other thing I use is just Microns. Just these disposable tech pens. They're not as good as rapidographs, but there's no pain in the ass with the cleaning. Rapidographs are, I hate cleaning those things, so I stopped using them a long time ago. It's worth it to me to, spend a few extra bucks to have these and, throw them away. The problem with these is they split sometimes if you press too hard, because you can press and get kind of like a thin to thick line and stuff with them, but if you press too hard, they'll split. Another problem is when they get older, like the size 01 here, can start to look like the 03. But anyway, so I use these for like smaller things, things in the background, architecture, stuff like that. I used to use Sharpies to fill in my blacks, but over time, the Sharpie ink kind of turns like a bluish color, and you can start seeing your strokes and stuff. So if you're selling original art, I don't recommend using a Sharpie for that, filling in your blacks. Now, as far as ink goes, I've got two bottles of ink here. This is Speedball, which I obviously spilled. I used to use Higgins Black Magic all the time. I was a pretty die-hard fan. I found that Speedball is much better these days. This is a big bottle. I've had it for a while, so hopefully the formula is still the same. The problem with Higgins Black Magic is it used to be fantastic. It used to be nice and rich, tarry black. But then they started adding more water, I guess, to maybe kind of dupe people and make more money. So I still have this bottle. I haven't opened it up for a long time since I bought it because I found that Speedball. But anyway, so this is an option. This kind of used to be standard in comics, it seemed like, but now it's kind of going the wayside. I've also heard like Pelican is pretty good, and I don't know. Right now I'm using Speedball. But regardless of using Speedball or Black Magic, and especially if you use Black Magic, my recommendation is to take off this cap before you're going to use it and let this sit out for a few days so some of that water evaporates inside, and then you get a nice tarry black inside. What else do I use? I use straight edges, just rulers, triangle. I love this thing, if you can see it on the screen. So this is a bendable French curve. So I don't really use French curve templates anymore. I just use this thing, and you can bend it, all over. They're pretty cheap at, standard art stores. And in the 14 years that I've been serious about my profession, this is only the second one I've had to buy. So they last a pretty long time. There's wire on the inside, you know, it's like an old bendable toy, like from when you were a kid. And after time, that wire, you know, when you use this for a while, that wire is going to develop breaks and stuff. But yeah, not bad being only my second one in 14 years. What else do I use? I use circle templates, ellipse templates. But I must admit that these can be kind of pricey, and you can get these in, you know, like the architecture section of the art stores and stuff. And what I'm doing now, actually, is when I go to ink a piece, you know, I print everything on non-photo blue and print that on a Bristol to ink. But now with ellipses and circles and stuff, I'm doing that in Adobe Illustrator, and then leaving that as black, and then I ink the rest of that, and so then the black fits in with my inks, if that makes sense. It's a lot faster for me, and yeah, it's just easier. It's just nicer, because sometimes, you know, if I'm doing a really big piece, and when I do like the small pencil, I might use, you know, like this is the biggest circle on this template, but when I blow it up, it's really big, and I don't have a compass. There's Illustrator, so, you know, I just ink it digitally. Oh, one more thing. Pro White. This is what I use to do any corrections that I might need. It's kind of like white acrylic paint, I think. And yeah, you can brush it on. I've had this for a really long time, and that's not to say that I don't do mistakes, because I certainly do. It just seems to last for a long time. And if you don't use it for a while, or if it, you know, takes you a while to go through it, it tends to dry up and get kind of crusty. But you can bring this back to life by just unscrewing the cap and pouring some water, you know, like a little bit of water in there, and letting it sit overnight, or depending on how crusty it gets, a couple nights. You know, then just mix it back up and it comes back to life. So this is what I use for corrections. I just realized I forgot to mention this. This is another thing I use. It's a Smudge Guard, and you can find these on Google. Just look up Smudge Guard. And what I got it for originally was to use on my tablet monitor. So when I draw, my hand doesn't stick. The monitor gets pretty warm and stuff. But I started using it this summer for just drawing at my art table and inking and stuff, because it does get pretty warm in my office, so my hand doesn't sweat and make the paper buckle or something, or my hand moves over to, you know, the art table, it's a different temperature, something, all of a sudden my hand sticks and, you know, I'm inking, my line gets all weird. So yeah, I've just gotten in a habit of using it now. So anyway, moving on. What I think about when I'm inking, that's always on my mind, is trying to get form, the light and shadow, weight, and I think about opposites too. So let me kind of try to demonstrate this. And what I've done is just kind of really roughly penciled in some rough shapes here. This would be like a leg, which I think is a good example of how to get all this kind of stuff kind of mentioned in one thing. Also, another thing is when I'm inking, my wrist is fairly stiff. I mean, it's got a little bit of give, but when I ink, I pivot on my elbow so that I get a nice smooth line. And I always go, since I'm right-handed, from left to right. And I move the paper around quite a bit so that I can always get that. You know, sometimes I'll go up and, you know, stuff like that. But as long as I can pivot on my elbow and move like that, never push, because then, you know, of course your bristles are going to fray out and stuff. So, yeah, always pull, don't push. Okay, so let's get a little ink on the brush. And so I've got the light source here. You can see that. And so what I would do is like a thinner line on top here. Like here's like the top of the knee going into the top of the thigh there. Now up here on the shin, it's going to be a little bit, probably a little bit thinner here where it meets the foot because of the light coming down here. And so I go like that, get a little bit thicker, and then at the knee, add a little pressure to the brush and make the knee, something like that. Sometimes, I don't know if you can see this, I'll leave, if one of the thinner lines is near the light source, I'll leave like a little tiny break and let your eye, or let the viewer's eye kind of fill in that gap. And also it kind of helps to show that there's you know, a severe light hitting that. So whenever you've got, you know, a light source hitting something, the line is going to be thinner than than the opposite line. So we're talking opposites again here. So this line here on the underside of the thigh is going to be thicker, and that denotes weight and also some of the shadow, light and shadow there. So what I do is I'll feather in this little wrinkle here, I guess, that goes into the calf, and then make that thicker so that it feels more weighty. You know, I mean, there's lots of artists that do use, comic artists too, and a lot of strip artists that do use one line weight, and that's fine, but you know, I just like the lushness of the brush and getting the different line weights. I think it makes things just more appealing to look at. So again, here we've got on the shin a thinner line because the light's coming down here. It's not really hitting too much over here. This is probably going to be a bit thinner again because of reflective light down here by the ankle. And so I bring that up, and definitely on the underside of the calf it's going to be a little bit thicker, and then let off a little pressure and make it thinner as it's hitting this line here. And so there you get a bit of opposite, and that adds to some of the visual appeal, I think. So if I was to finish this, top of the foot sticks out here, so it'd be kind of thin. I might make it thicker going into this thin line here for the opposite. You know, the bottom of the foot is definitely going to be thicker, and that adds weight, grounds the characters, or you know, whatever you're drawing. A heavier line at the bottom is going to ground it. So not a great drawing, but you know, I think it demonstrates that. So another thing about form, and this is, I do a lot of feathering when I brush ink, and this is probably because of just some of the influences that I have in inking, and a lot of them are old 60s and 70s comic book inkers that are I cannot talk, escaping me at the moment. But for modern guys that I really like for inks is Eric Powell, who does the Goon, Mike Allred. I really like his simple, clean, kind of almost like 60s pop inspired line. He does Madman and a bunch of other like mainstream stuff. And then there's another person who's kind of also escaping me at the moment. Oh, Charles Burns. This is where I get most of the stuff. So again, here's a light source right there coming down, hitting this little tiny cylinder. So, you know, it's going to be lighter here. It's definitely going to be really light up there. And so say it's hitting there. So maybe I'll start the shadow about right here, and I'll feather this in, the shadow in like this. And I follow the form. So you're always going to follow the form, you know, whether it's a cheek or leg, if you're going to do any kind of shading like that. And what this does here too is it kind of I don't know, it's like visual code for a gradient, because here it's very white on the edge here, and then all of a sudden the white is going into the black, and the black is creeping in into the white. So, you know, it does kind of have the illusion of a gradient. Now, if I was to color this or wanted to make it look like there's a lot of reflective light and get just a little less graphic, I guess my approach is kind of graphic. At least I kind of think about it that way. So, again, feathering, following the form. You know, like I said, this applies to cheeks or any kind of form. So many different forms on the face. So you kind of want to follow. So there you go. So that would be, you know, the main light, a little bit of reflective light here. And the reflective light stuff really helps when you're doing, you know, graphic comic stuff, especially if you've got like a dark room or something, and you know, you kind of want to show a little bit of the reflective light bouncing off the wall or something. So what else can I say about the brush? Well, a good way to practice, I mean, when I first started, you know, I would get a line that was, well, not that jagged, but, you know, kind of like that. And it does take some practice. So if this is some, you know, this kind of comic style brushwork that you'd like to do, you know, it took me a long time to feel comfortable with it. But I recommend just in a sketchbook, get the brush and just practice. This is, you know, practice pressure. You know, get thicker, get thinner, that kind of stuff. You can practice your feathering that follows form. Like, let's say something goes like that. And you just do this kind of stuff in your sketchbook all the time. This is also a good way to warm up. Sometimes I do this. Like, I don't know if you can see on the side over there. This is kind of where I just put a piece of Bristol, or in this case, manga paper, and that's where I, you know, test my stroke. And sometimes before I even start drawing, if I'm feeling kind of rusty that day, I'll do a few of these. And then, you know, do some long strokes too to practice, like pivoting on your elbow. Oops, did I just smear that? Nope, good. You gotta watch out for that too. So that's another tip. Say this is a comic page and I'm doing a lot of stuff over here. But there's a lot of stuff I still want to do, and this ink is really wet. I just flip it over and, you know, do something on the other side. So let's see, another thing that kind of goes along with like the weight, and this kind of mimics painting a bit, the idea of atmospheric perspective, is things that are also in the foreground. The lines are going to be thicker than things in a background plane, and so you got to think about your middle planes there if you've got a lot of those. So it's the same kind of principle as this, you know, almost, but you're thinking atmosphere instead of weight so much. So here's some really crudely drawn, like a city block that only has 3 buildings, but there's a lot of atmospheric perspective here. So here I'll take, you know, like a thick line that denotes, like, this is the foreground building. This is what is closest to you. It's thicker. And some windows. Those are windows. Then the next building is going to be a little thinner. Sorry if the camera is bouncing. I've got this like arm that the camera is on, and it's not super stable, so I'll try not to get too crazy. And then this background building, you could even, you know, like break the line a little bit, like I was talking about. It kind of makes things a little bit lighter and feel a little, you know, either lighter or farther away. Helps with the atmosphere. What else can I talk about this? So when I'm kind of doing like architecture or, you know, man-made objects, things like that, especially on buildings when they get old, sometimes, and I said this in another video where I was just doing an environment that was in the city, this building. Sometimes I'll rule out a line, you know, pretend that's ruled out and straight, and then I'll take the straight edge off and then I'll freehand it, so it gets a little like imperfect, and then, you know, straight edge some more, and then sometimes I'll even like take a divot out of the line. You can also, you know, do, and don't get too crazy with this, but let's go back to the cylinder up here. Make this feel a little bit older. It's got some nicks in it, you know, stuff like that. You can do that with the brush too. But I tend to use a pen for really small details and brush for bigger things. So, you know, on a comic page, if you got a character that's like this big, I might actually just do all pen on that, you know, and maybe just fill in the blacks with the brush, or if there's a bigger object near the character, brush some of that stuff out. But yeah, so this is pretty much what I do. I think that's about it. So let's move on to, I'm working on a piece for a client right now. It's just a really quick portrait, and try to apply some of this stuff here. I thought of a couple more inkers that I really like. Ramona Frieden, she's a fantastic illustrator. Probably most popular for being the illustrator on Aquaman and Metamorpho for DC in the Silver Age of comics. At least that's where I know her from the most. she's got like a really nice, lush but clean line. And then I like Terry Austin, who I guess got on my radar sometime in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s when I was a kid. And he just seems to ink everybody really well. But anyway, so what I've got here is I've started this job for this client, and they're not a comic company, they are a software company, and they have me do portraits of all their staff for their website and business cards and stuff like that. So anyway, so to kind of show some of the stuff I was talking about, so if you look at the eye here, there's a heavier line here because the light source is kind of coming down, and you know that's to kind of denote shadow right there. Also, this does double duty as eyelashes. If you're doing like pretty girl art or something like that, you might want to make this real thick for some nice lush, you know, healthy eyelashes. Down here, what I've done on the lower lid is I've done a little bit of a break here and here because there's going to be light there, and there's a little tiny shelf on the top of your lower eyelid. So, and that catches light sometimes. So that's what I've done there, and you know, it feels more light, and you know, the viewer can fill in the space there as well. I've done a little feathering here in the corner of his eye, right there and there. You know, different pressures of line widths or weights, and kind of the reason like that is like, I don't know if you can see this up here. This part right here, where you know this is like the top of the cranium that comes out here. Now I've done a line here and little feather marks to make that light and not like a real harsh shadow. If his cranium was real bulbous or something like that, this would be like a real thick line. You know, so you got to worry about your line weights, line widths. You know, little tiny wrinkle. If I did like a heavier line, that would feel like a real deep furrow. And even if the people have deep furrows like that and you're doing portraits of them, they don't want to see that stuff. Like when I started working for this company, they wanted me to do caricatures, and I thought, oh, this will be a lot of fun. You know, I can do like take influence from like Mort Drucker from the Mad magazines I used to really like when I was a kid, and they didn't like them. they thought people were too offended or thought they were grotesque. So now I just consider what they think is a caricature as a portrait that's lightly caricatured, I guess. So anyway, what else can I talk about? Oh, on the mouth here, light's coming down, so there's going to be a thicker line under his lip there, and a thinner line right here where his lip is. So let's get to inking here, and I'll just kind of, I guess, say whatever comes on my mind as I'm doing this. Again, turning the page. So his lip here, there's going to be a shadow. So it's going to be kind of a thicker line. So, you know, apply pressure and get lighter as we get towards the end. And there was a bit of a shadow there, so what I want to do is kind of feather some stuff. Kind of a shadow. So it's not super harsh, but, you know, you can see that there's a shadow there. This guy does, you know, he is a bit older, a little late middle age, I think. So, you know, he's got some age marks. But if I put every single line that, you know, an older person has, then that starts to make them look ancient. So you really got to pick your lines when you're dealing with age and stuff like that. You don't have to draw everything. Take a lesson from Alex Toth and simplify, because this is just all about simplifying. It's all about communication and where you put your marks. So again, the line's going to be tapered because it's thinner where the light is hitting, and then it gets a bit thicker. But I don't want this to be super harsh, so it's going to be thin, kind of thick. See? Oh, what else can I do here? So, well, that's drying there. Let's talk about the form here. So your neck is essentially a cylinder, but it does, you know, I mean, it's got, you know, bumps. It's got an Ab's apple here and stuff. So you gotta think about that. Light's coming down here, so I do want to kind of feather this let's see how I'm slightly curving the line so it goes around the neck shape. Just feathering that out using light pressure and then thicker pressure. As I come down there, so like that. So that seems pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to let this dry a little bit and let's talk about hair. Hair is light. It's not real weighty unless you're drawing somebody from the 80s with a lot of Aquanet or something. So you're going to want to use lighter pressure. And a lot of times I don't finish the ends. I don't close the ends. Because that also, I close some of them, but it helps with the lightness. And just kind of, guess I'm using a bit of my wrist here, but not very much. Still kind of pivoting on my elbow, just using really sharp or short strokes. So again, it can be thicker on the side that's got shadow. So I'll tend to close more of those lines over there. This hair right here is going to be lighter. It's going to be opposite than that side. So with that, I definitely don't close the lines. And I do vary the pressure because there are different shadows in the hair. A lot of shadows in the hair. You want to simplify things. So if you can see how the difference of this side right here, I'll show you closer. That side right there, not closing the lines, whereas this side's thicker. Alright, so I finished the hair. So you can see, again, lighter over here, heavier strokes over here, lighter through here, that kind of stuff. This right here under the cheeks is going to have kind of a harsh shadow, but it starts off pretty light, or else it's going to be way too harsh, and the gal will be bummed. So, there. So we got harsher shadow there. And this is kind of seeing some light, but there's going to be a little shadow over here. So what I'm going to do is, once again, kind of feather that a bit. And also kind of follow the form. There. Show a little bit of volume and gradient too. Like what I'm going to do right here. So let's get his nose here. And this is going to kind of come up like that. Looks about right. And so this is going to be black in there. Be kind of designy. And then I want to feather a little bit here to show the volume of the cheek. So I'm going to use pretty light pressure. Maybe some lines that are kind of close together because it's a little bit dark over here. And then get a little bit lighter. Something like that. Okay, the corner of his eye socket up here is going to be pretty dark, but I want to feather that in. Here is the upper lid is right there. So I kind of want to, again, follow the form. I don't want it to go in too harshly. So I feather into that blackness right there. And I'll fill in the black just so you can kind of see what it's going to look like better. Man, if I am going to just draw and talk, like I was mentioning on the last video, I'm going to have to get used to it. Because usually, when I'm drawing here by myself, in my office, I'm not really talking to anybody. I'm listening to things, so I have to get used to it. So, apologies if I trail off and stop talking. So, again, on this side, more light on this side, so the lines are a little bit thinner. But underneath the lower eyelid here, coming out of the shadow, it's going to be a bit harsher, thicker shadow. Something like that. Kind of messed up there, so that's another thing, that the two line thing that I do. Sometimes if you do a wobbly line, you add another little tiny line next to it and it fixes it. So again, kind of feathering out of the harsh shadow here. Just kind of lighten it up, but you don't want to do it too much because then he's going to look just a little too old. I think I already said he's looks to be a guy about in his 50s, which is completely no fair that he's got this like abundance of hair. You know, I'm just bitter because I'm losing mine. And so that is all finished. I got a lot of questions from you guys about inking, so I hope I hit on all of them. If I didn't, please let me know in the comments below. Well, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks everybody for subscribing and liking and sharing and commenting and all that stuff. I really appreciate it. Don't forget, there's the t-shirt limited edition over at teespring.com/crablore, and I will see you soon. Take care everybody. Bye-bye.